You know what's interesting about people who are always late? Everyone thinks it's disrespect or poor planning. But the psychology behind chronic lateness is actually darker and more complex than that. It's not about the clock, it's about control. And maybe, if you're honest, it's about something you've been avoiding. You've heard it 1,000 times. Just leave earlier. Set an alarm. Respect other people's time. And you've tried. You really have. You've set multiple alarms. You've planned to leave with extra buffer time. You've promised yourself that this time will be different. And yet, somehow, you're still late. Still apologizing. Still watching people's faces shift from patience to frustration as you walk in 15 minutes after you said you'd be there. And here's what makes it worse. You genuinely don't mean to be late. You're not trying to disrespect anyone. You're not sitting at home thinking, I'm gonna make them wait just to prove a point. But it keeps happening, over and over, until people stop believing your apologies, until they start planning around your lateness, until running late becomes part of your identity whether you want it to be or not. So what's actually happening here? Because if it were just about time management, you would have fixed it by now. If it were just about setting better alarms, you wouldn't still be struggling with this years into adulthood. The truth is, chronic lateness isn't a scheduling problem. It's a psychological pattern, and understanding what's really going on beneath the surface might be the only way to actually change it. Psychologists have identified something called time optimism bias. It's when your brain consistently underestimates how long tasks will take. You think getting ready will take 10 minutes when it actually takes 30. You think traffic will be light when statistically it rarely is. You think you can squeeze in one more thing before you leave when realistically that one thing always makes you late. Your brain is genuinely miscalculating time, not intentionally, but consistently. But here's where it gets interesting. Time optimism isn't random. It's not just a quirk of perception. Research shows it's often linked to something deeper, a desire to maximize every moment. People who are chronically late often have what psychologists call a high present moment orientation. You're so focused on what you're doing right now that future commitments feel abstract, distant, less real than the task in front of you. So you keep working on that email or scrolling that app or finishing that conversation because it feels more important in the moment than leaving on time for something that hasn't happened yet. And maybe that sounds selfish. Maybe you've been told it is. But here's what people don't understand. For many chronically late people, this isn't about not caring, it's about struggling to disengage. Your brain has difficulty switching contexts. Stopping one thing to start another feels cognitively expensive. So you push it. You convince yourself you have just a little more time. You tell yourself you can make up the minutes somehow. And by the time you realize you can't, you're already late. There's also another layer here that nobody talks about. For some people, chronic lateness is a form of control in a life that otherwise feels controlled by everyone else.
Think about it. Most of your day is dictated by other people's schedules. Work meetings you didn't choose, social obligations you feel pressured to attend, appointments and commitments that were decided for you. And lateness, even subconsciously, becomes the one small way you assert autonomy. It's your time. Your pace, your refusal to be completely governed by everyone else's expectations. Psychologists call this passive resistance. It's not active rebellion. You're not consciously trying to disrupt anything, but on some level, being late allows you to maintain a sense of control over your own existence. It says, you don't get to dictate every minute of my life, even if that message is never spoken, even if you'd never admit it out loud. Even if it damages relationships and creates stress you don't want. But let's be honest about something most chronically late people won't say. There's also an element of denial, a refusal to accept limitations. You want to believe you can do everything. You can finish this task and make it on time, that you can live without constraints, that the rules of time that apply to everyone else somehow don't apply to you. And that's not arrogance. It's optimism taken to a dysfunctional extreme. It's your brain protecting you from the discomfort of accepting that you can't have it all, that choices have consequences. That leaving on time means stopping what you're doing, even when you don't want to. Neuroscientifically, there's something happening in your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for planning, impulse control, and time perception. Research shows that people who struggle with chronic lateness often have reduced activity in this region when it comes to future-oriented thinking. Your brain is less activated by future consequences than by immediate rewards. So, the satisfaction of finishing what you're doing right now outweighs the abstract negative of being late later. Your brain literally values the present more than the future. Not because you're selfish, but because that's how your neural wiring prioritizes information. And here's where the psychology gets uncomfortable, because chronic lateness also correlates with certain personality traits. Studies show that people who are consistently late often score higher in what's called low conscientiousness. That doesn't mean you're a bad person. It means you're less driven by duty, obligation, and rule following. You're more spontaneous, more flexible, more focused on experience than structure. And in many contexts, those are beautiful qualities. They make you creative, adaptable, present. But in a world that runs on schedules and commitments, they also make you late. There's also a connection to anxiety that people don't expect. For some chronically late people, the lateness isn't about not caring, it's about caring too much. You procrastinate leaving because you're anxious about the destination, about the meeting, about the social situation you're walking into. So you delay. You find reasons to stay where you are just a little longer. You tell yourself you're finishing things when really you're avoiding the transition. And by the time you force yourself to go, you're already behind.
But here's what makes this pattern so destructive. Chronic lateness doesn't just affect you, it affects everyone around you. Your friends who wait at restaurants, your coworkers who start meetings without you, your family who learns not to rely on you. And over time, those small moments of lateness accumulate into something bigger. A reputation, a loss of trust, a sense that you don't value other people's time as much as you value your own, even if that's not true, even if you'd never intentionally hurt anyone. Maybe you've noticed how people have started to adapt to you. They tell you the event starts 30 minutes earlier than it actually does. They stop inviting you to things that require punctuality. They make plans around your expected lateness. And while part of you might feel relieved that they've adjusted, another part of you feels the weight of that. The knowledge that you've become someone people have to manage, someone whose word doesn't quite mean what it should. And maybe that hurts more than you admit. Maybe you're tired of apologizing, tired of the shame that comes with walking in late again, tired of watching people's expressions shift from understanding to resignation, tired of being the person who can't seem to get this one basic thing right, no matter how hard you try. Because you do try. You set intentions, you make plans, you genuinely want to be on time. But something in the execution keeps failing, and you can't quite figure out what it is. Here's what needs to be understood. Chronic lateness is rarely about a single cause. It's usually a combination of factors. Time perception issues, executive function challenges, anxiety, control needs, optimism bias, difficulty with transitions. For some people, it's also linked to ADHD, where time blindness is a genuine neurological symptom, where the ability to accurately gauge how much time has passed or how much time a task will take is fundamentally impaired. And if that's you, if you've always struggled with this despite genuinely trying, it might be worth exploring whether there's something deeper going on that you've been blaming yourself for when, really, you needed support. But even without a diagnosis, there are patterns you can start to recognize in yourself. Do you underestimate time because you want to believe you're capable of more than is realistic? Do you resist leaving because stopping what you're doing feels like failure? Do you sabotage your own punctuality because being on time feels like giving in to other people's control? Do you avoid the discomfort of transitions by delaying them until they become crises? These aren't easy questions to sit with, because they require you to look at the ways your lateness serves you psychologically even as it hurts you practically. And that's uncomfortable. It means acknowledging that on some level, you're choosing this. Not consciously, not maliciously, but choosing it nonetheless through the patterns you repeat and the changes you resist making. Here's the hard truth. You can't fix chronic lateness with better alarms. You can't shame yourself into punctuality. You can't logic your way out of a pattern that's rooted in how your brain processes time, control, and transitions. What you can do is start being honest about what's really happening, about what lateness is protecting you from, about what it's giving you that being on time doesn't. And then you can decide if that trade-off is still worth it. Maybe it's time to stop fighting the symptoms and start addressing the cause. If it's time blindness, you need external structure, timers, visual schedules, buffer time built into every estimate. If it's control issues, you need to find healthier ways to assert autonomy that don't damage relationships. If it's anxiety, you need to address what you're avoiding instead of delaying the inevitable. If it's transition difficulty, you need to practice disengaging from tasks before they're fully complete and accepting that good enough is sometimes necessary. And maybe you also need to grieve something. The fantasy that you can have everything, that you can finish every task and still arrive on time, that you can live without limitations or consequences, that you're somehow exempt from the constraints everyone else operates within. Because you're not. And continuing to act like you are only creates more pain for you and everyone around you. But here's what also needs to be said. If you've been chronically late your whole life, if you've tried everything and nothing sticks, you're not a lost cause. You're not fundamentally broken. You're someone whose brain works differently in relation to time. And while that creates real challenges, it also doesn't define your worth. You can be someone who struggles with punctuality and still be kind, still be valuable, still be loved. Your lateness doesn't make you a bad person, but it does have consequences. And pretending it doesn't only makes those consequences worse. So maybe the question isn't how to never be late again. Maybe the question is, what is my lateness costing me? What relationships am I damaging? What opportunities am I losing? What version of myself am I preventing from showing up? And is whatever I'm getting from this pattern worth it, what I'm giving up? Because here's the truth. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be on time to everything. But you do have to be honest about what's happening, about why it's happening, about whether you're willing to do the uncomfortable work of changing it. Not for other people, not to meet some arbitrary standard of respectability, but because you deserve to be someone people can rely on. Because you deserve relationships built on trust instead of accommodation. Because you deserve to stop carrying the shame of a pattern you can keep choosing or finally address. Your lateness isn't who you are, but it is what you're doing. And only you can decide if that's still acceptable. If this resonated, if you felt the weight of recognition, leave a comment. What does your lateness protect you from? And if you want more of these honest psychological explorations, subscribe, because we're just getting started.